Well, hello everybody. Danny back from Deepsouth Homestead. We back in the condo again. Uh, I kind of like coming down here because it's like quiet, it's peaceful. Much like when there ain't nobody in your house but just you, and you're just kind of sitting around and everything's quiet. TV's off. You got time. You can commune. You can gather your thoughts together, and that's kind of where I'm at when I come down here. You know, uh, just get you a cup of coffee or a glass of tea or whatever it is, the beverages that you choose to drink, and let's just sit down today. Let's just talk. And uh, lots been going on with me and Miss Wanda, in and out of the doctors and the hospitals and different things like that. Uh, the day you see this, tomorrow, Miss Wanda has to go to the hospital for a procedure. Um, we're praying that it turns out well. That there's nothing, it doesn't show up anything really bad or anything like that. So keep us in your prayers on that. We really appreciate it. And I just come down here to kind of gather my thoughts, because life is just not really that certain. Because Wanda and I, we eat very, very healthy. Now, Wanda may eat a little more unhealthy than I do, but for the most part, we both eat very healthy. And the hospital knows that. My doctor that's seeing her knows that. And he, he does everything he can to not just push meds on us, because he knows he's given them to me in the past, and I told him, I said, I'm not taking that. And he's like, well, but Brother Danny, you need, I said, look, but you and me both know that ain't going to do no good. And he said, well, okay. So he knows how we are, and he's a really good doctor. Now, as far as how things are going over here at Pecan Grove, we get asked all the time, what are y'all doing? Well, to be honest with you, right now, we're not doing a whole lot because we're trying to get Ms. Wanda taken care of. And when you have to follow the insurance protocols and all this kind of stuff, you got to go to this one, you got to go to that one, you got to have this done, you got to have that done. The old day of, just going and seeing your doctor and getting everything done at one time, that just don't exist no more. So that's where we're at. We're not accomplishing a whole lot. Just trying to get her well. That's the main issue right now. Of course, now, garden season is it's really right on us, and that's why we're pushing as hard as we are right now to get us both physically up to where we need to be, because it's fixing to be garden season. And if there's something wrong, we want to know it before garden season, where we can make plans to how to do things, what we're going to do, how we're going to approach different things. And the scripture, I was trying to remember exactly where the verse is located. Now, I can't remember exactly where it's located. I won't misquote that part. But it says, talking about a king never builds a city without first considering the cost of it. And a king doesn't go into battle without considering the cost of the battle and what it's going to cost him. That's just wisdom, and that's where we're at with our getting ready for our gardening. Now, we have some good gardening videos coming up. I think you'll enjoy it, Pecan Grove. But before we actually indulge in a lot of gardening, we've got to know where we're at, what it's going to cost to get our physical health back where it needs to be before we go and overload ourselves with something that we just can't, we can't take care of. And we have to realize we are aging, and because of that, we're making changes to Pecan Grove so that it it works with our older age a lot better. You know, Deep South, we have a lot going on over at Deep South, and the high tunnels really need some working on the insides of them. The soil needs to be reworked and all that kind of stuff. And I told Wanda, I said, you know what? Let's just let all that rest this year. Let's clean it up and let's let it rest and have a time of healing, you know. And we'll come over to Pecan Grove and we'll do everything we need to do over here so that we can carry on. Because I'm going to go ahead and say this. I hope they don't take the video because of this, because this is an important video. There's a lot of information out there right now that's being withheld from you. If you don't have, I'm watching my words, guys. If you don't have access to things that goes on behind the scenes, then you will not know. Now, some people are fortunate enough to have family in other countries. And if you do, then you will probably already know what I'm fixing to say. Because other countries, and predominantly right now it's most all countries except the U.S., they're warning their people and telling them to prepare for a couple of different things. They're actually doing news broadcasts, they're doing speeches, they're doing billboards, they're doing television broadcasts. Number one, get ready for war. Because guys, I have to watch my words. The truth of the matter is, what's being said in other countries is that there won't be any place, hardly, on the surface of the whole earth that won't be touched by war within the next, some say 2 years, some say 4 years, that every place on the face of the earth will be touched. You know, and in America here, we've been blessed that since the Civil War, basically, we've not really had any fighting on our soil here as a nation. And the result of that is people here have become complacent. They don't really understand what it's like to live under those conditions. That's why I did the last porch time, or maybe one before that even. You know, get to know your neighbor, you know, because you're going to want to know your neighbors, I promise you. And that's one of the things that I mentioned to y'all that other countries have over us, is that they know their neighbors. And it pays to know your neighbor. Whether good or bad, you need to know. And my daddy always told me, he said, son, keep your friends close, but keep your enemies a lot closer than your friends are. So, but it's not only the element of war that's going to touch every aspect of the face of the earth. It's there's not going to be any food. And, well, I say there's not going to be any. There'll be a limited supply, what they're saying. And if you're not one who at least puts forth an effort to provide for yourself, then, you know, you'll become a casualty unless you sign into their system. There's going to be a way you can sign into their system. Now, let me go ahead and tell you, there is a movement right now by the World Health Organization and the United Nations to ban home gardening. And it's not, they're not doing it based on, they knew they couldn't pull this one off, because I think they actually began to try and they realized they weren't going to be able to do it. It's not because it's not healthy for you, and not because it's going to kill you or anything like that. It's going to be based on carbon footprint. They're going to be trying to and there's truth. Let me say this. When the wicked do something, there's always an element of truth in what they say. But they're gonna come out with the story that your carbon footprint is too high if you home garden to raise your food. And if you want to be 100% honest about that, that's actually an accurate statement, because it does cost a lot more to produce what you eat at home, whether it's meat or whether it's vegetables or whatever it is, grain or whatever it is that you raise. It will cost you more to do it yourself than it is to do it with mechanized equipment. And therefore, they will limit and do what, and it's been done in many other countries in the world many times. I mean, Russia's done it. Soviet Union, I say Russia, the Soviet Union's done it. China's done it. Where they come in, and if you own land that you garden on, they just confiscate it. They take it. And when they take it, they virtually put it into government production. And they, you have to still have to work it, but you don't really get anything from it. Not enough to even keep you alive. And if you go back and look in history, when the Soviet Union done that, when Mao Zedong and China done that, hundreds of thousands of people just died from starvation because they didn't give them enough to even live off of on their own land. So it's not uncommon for that to happen, and it is in the making right now. We'll say that it's in the making. So where does that leave us at? We call ourselves preppers. Some people do. Some people call themselves a homesteader. Some people call themselves, survivalists. There's lots of different terminologies out there that's used. But the bottom line is this: where do you fit in this puzzle at? And how far are you willing to go? Are you willing to give your life, for what you believe, as far as being able to raise your own food? Because they will take your life. That's no question about that. That happened in Germany and Poland and different places like that. They just go through, see a man plowing in a field with a mule, they just shoot him, take the mules, and they just do it for recreation, and you have to stop and think about where am I at in this? Where am I going to fit at in this? And how am I going to survive this if it happens? It's like there's a lot of stuff. Let's just take our food system, for instance. I've been watching some documentaries, and I encourage you to watch them if you haven't. One of them's called Sustainable. I finally got that to come up on my computer where I could watch it. And when it come on, the chef that started off was one of the guys that I'm very familiar with, Rick Bayless. I mean, I love the guy. Him and there's only two people who cooked that in my younger years that I ever enjoyed, what they done and all, and that was Rick Bayless. He was number one from down in Mexico. He done a lot of cooking in Oaxaca, I can't hardly pronounce it, Oaxaca, Mexico, over on the western side of Mexico over there. And Stephen Reichlin from Barbecue University. These are two guys that I grew to love, And when Rick came on and began to talk about food sustainability, that's what really caused me to want to watch that documentary. And It's about an hour and a half, I think, long, best I remember. Hour and a half, maybe longer than that. I don't remember. But I did take time to watch it because it was just raining outside. Wasn't nothing else to do. I mean, just had to sit in a chair and just be bored or try to educate yourself. And you know, they brought out some very important things in this documentary. You know, things that we should be careful of. You know, we go in the grocery stores and we pick up something. We're picking it up, and you know, and it says, "Oh, this is all natural." And we think, "Oh, this is good for us." You know, and me and Wanda get the biggest joke out of that always, because we was at it's been years ago, but we was at Walmart, and Wanda picked up a chicken, and she said, "Look at this." Right in the middle of the store, and she says, "Look at this." I said, "What?" She says, "What does this say?" I said, "All natural." She said, "What other kind of chicken is there?" Now, this was before they came out with, and it's probably a precursor to this, before they come out with printed meat and, you know, the lab grown meat and all that kind of stuff hadn't come on the markets yet. But back in those days, they called it all natural chicken. And Wanda would always laugh at that, and she'd say, "Look at this, all natural chicken," out in Walmart. People would just look at her, you know. And we'd get a big chuckle out of it. But, you know, when something says all natural, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's good for you. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you got to stop and think about it. One of the authors on this documentary, Sustainable, he brought out a very important part. He said, you know, you got to be careful about all natural. He said cyanide is all natural, but it's not good for you. And I was thinking about things. You know, I try to relate things back to my own life or my family's life. And I thought about the time that my mom come down with arsenic poisoning and had to be hospitalized. And then the law went to my father because they thought my father was poisoning her. And come to find out, his arsenic poisoning was higher than hers. And so they dropped everything then, and they began to tell them. They said, well, you know, arsenic it's all natural. Said it's in the well water. It's in the soil. If you burn a fire in your house, you can get it through burning a fire in a fireplace. If you're a mechanic and you fool with brake shoes, the brake dust has arsenic. I mean, they said it's just everywhere. And they said, we don't really know where y'all's come from until they began to do some research and come to find out. My mom and dad always went to the restaurants during the day when they, instead of eating a big dinner, they would just eat a salad. Well, come to find out, some of these salads, the lettuce was being shipped in from Mexico, and the lettuce to keep insects off of it was treated with arsenic. So once they cut out the lettuce and the salads and stuff like that, the arsenic poisoning went away, and they regained their health back. But and then another thing that this documentary brought out that I thought was really interesting. Wanda already knew this, but was people who have an intolerance for gluten. You know, you go in a store, you start looking for things, and you see gluten-free all over stuff. And they put gluten-free on things that has never had gluten in it to start with. It's a marketing scheme. So, you know, Wanda and I would get the biggest kick out of that when we'd go in a grocery store. I'd pick something up and I go, look, gluten-free. And she goes, well, it don't have gluten in it anyway. I said, I know, but they reminding you it's gluten-free. And we would just chuckle and get a big kick out of it. We'd go through the stores and just look at stuff that said stuff like that, you know, just for the fun of it. It's a marketing scheme to get people to think, oh, that's gluten-free, I need to buy that. Well, it's never had gluten in it. But then, you know, it's just, you sit back and you think about what the food industry's done to everybody. Children, let's take children, for instance. One of the things that was mentioned on there is there's over $1 million a year. Let me put it this way, several $1 million a year spent on children advertisements, things like cereal and all kinds of things like this, to lead children these bad foods for them. You know what I'm saying? Little fast food things like these little strip cheese things, all this kind of stuff. They just try to put all this junk out there. Little lunch pack things you put in your lunchbox, all this kind of stuff. All of it very unhealthy for you. And loaded with chemicals, just loaded with chemicals. one of the things Wanda and I have noticed here lately is you pick up a loaf of bread. Now, I used to make my own bread. We did it when we brought in the Sabbath years ago before Wanda and I got married. My former wife and I would bake bread every Friday, a loaf of bread, and braid it, and we would have it for for the Sabbath. And it was only basically like 3 or 4 ingredients in it, you know. And you pick up a loaf of bread in the store today, and there's like 20 ingredients on the bag, and half of them you can't even pronounce. So, why? You know, when I was growing up, there was a saying: the whiter the bread, the faster you're dead. I well remember my grandmother. She bought a loaf of white bread and brought it home. And when Grandpa sat down at the table to eat, she gave him a slice of that light bread to eat. And he looked at that, and he looked up there, and her name was Birdie. They called her Birdie Mae. He said, "Birdie Mae, what is this?" And my grandpa, they called him Beebe. Everybody had nicknames back then, short names. And she said, "Baby, that's the new bread that's come out." He picked it up, he held it in his hand, he looked at it. He said, "I ain't eating that stuff." And back then in the kitchen, they kept a slop bucket. Everybody had a pig, and they kept a slop bucket there. And it usually had liquid in it from coffee grounds, because they put coffee grounds, they just had liquid in it. And he throwed that slice of bread down there in that slop bucket. He said, "I want you to watch something, Birdie Mae. Look at that. Look at that slice of bread." And it began to absorb that liquid, and it just kind of melted away. You could still see the brown rim around the edge of it. The center of it just kind of melted away. He said, "That's what it's going to do when you put it in your belly, Birdie Mae." He said, "Now get me some biscuits." He said, if you're gonna get some bread," he said, "cook a biscuit. Or some cornbread or something like that. Don't bring me no more of this mess." My grandpa was a very ornery man, and I still remember that stuff, from back then. And I think about our food system and all that they've done. Because, food is one of the things we all have in common. And, like we talked about once before, nobody used to ever, you just never hear of cancer and all these immune diseases and all that kind of stuff until they began to tamper with the food, genetically modified food came in the early 90s. And from that point forward, everything's just really escalated. And now it's really fixing, I promise you, it's fixing to go to the next level. There's things I can't say on here, but it would just blow your mind as to what the next levels is on the food. But and one of the things that's brought this on is just wealth. These companies, they just want to get richer and richer and richer, so they use more chemicals in the food because they can make it for cheaper and it has a longer shelf life. It's kind of like you go to a grocery store and you go to buy fresh vegetables. And everybody goes, "Well, I'm getting fresh vegetables here. Look, I've got bell peppers and tomatoes and, I've got some lettuce and I've got different things, and rutabagas and turnips and all this kind of stuff." And they say, "Well, I'm eating a good, healthy diet. I got my fruit here. I got my apples. I got my pears. I got all this stuff." Well, I don't want to break your heart, but every bit of that stuff that I just mentioned is void of anything. Every bit of it's been irradiated, had radiation run through it to make it have a longer shelf life so that the natural enzymes in it do not begin to break down and it have a very short shelf life. So basically you're just eating a filler. You have very little minerals or vitamins in it at all. Now, the way to avoid that is to go to farmers markets or raise your own. Even farmers markets are really dangerous because you really don't know what they've sprayed on all this food. All these U-pickets and stuff like that, very unhealthy places to go. The only things you have going for you at those places is they haven't been irradiated. That's the one thing you have going for you. But I promise you, they're loaded with chemicals. So the only other option is to raise your own food, but then again, like I said, the World Health Organization and all that is trying to make it illegal to grow your own gardens because of the carbon footprint. So where does that leave us? You stop. I mean, if something, I'm telling you, they're saying within the next 2, some say 2, like I said, some say 4 years, that the whole world won't be any world is not touched by war, and there will absolutely be almost no food available. So where will that leave you and your family? Other nations are telling all their citizens to prepare. Stock up now. Put back everything you think your family's going to need for the next several years. They used to say, a year. Now they're saying up to 7 years we need to have enough stuff stocked up. Well, come to the good old USA. If you put that much stuff back, you're a terrorist. So you're hoarding. You're called a hoarder. You're called all kind of quote unquote names. And I don't pay no attention to none of that stuff. I told Wanda, I said, I'll be one of the first ones they probably come and try to just do away with, because I've never complied with anything, and I don't ever plan on starting, And of course we have the situation going on, in the southern part of our country here. I can't really talk about it because they will pull me down for that. That we've got to really pray about, because this is fixing to turn into something really nasty, especially if the powers to be nationalizes, I'm going to use that word, the National Guard. Because if they do, then they have a new leader. And it's not the state, let me put it that way. So we gotta really be careful, guys, about what we're doing and how we're doing it. And I'm trying to talk in a partial riddle today, and maybe somewhat of a parable, telling you that you will reap what you sow, much as in the scriptures the Lord gives us a parable of the reaper and the sower and the reaper. And some seed fell on good ground, some seed fell on stony ground. Some of them sprung up and then they went away because they didn't have any root system. In other words, they weren't strong. They just withered away. That's kind of what I'm doing today. I'm trying to use a scenario like the Lord did when He spoke, not trying to put myself to be like Him, but to do what He done, to maybe help us to understand that there's something coming, not only upon the earth, but above the earth. And I'm not talking about the Lord. I'm talking about there's something coming that is going to change life as we know it. And it's not that far away. So we need to be prepared. We need to be fortified. I'm going to tell you to get yourself fortified so that you'll be able to withstand the evil day when it comes. So guys, I'm sitting here at the food plot watching for something to come out. And I hope that today, as I sit here in the condo, that it's been a blessing to you. It's not a doom and a gloom. Don't go on there saying that. This is not a doom and gloom video. This is an informational video that I'm trying to very quietly put a message out. You got a very short time. Make the best of it. Thank you guys from Deepsouth Homestead.